All right, hello, everybody, and welcome in to Wiki-Wednesday. It's time to get our knowledge on. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. This is Wiki-Wednesday. It is a newer segment that's debuted here just a couple weeks ago. This is actually episode 3. If you want to catch up on the crazy deep lore that we have so far, you can find the past episodes on YouTube. But this is just a segment where it's turning into, it was going to be just me going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole, and like I do on my free time, and just see where I end up on stream. But we've started including guests in this, and now I'm really enjoying having a different guest every week travel down a Wikipedia rabbit hole with me. And this week I have alynntheyelloweyed. He is a variety streamer here on Twitch. He was also a member of the Variety Pack stream team with me on Mixer. We are now over here, and he is joining us this evening to go down this rabbit hole. We're going to be starting off with the theme of coconut crabs, which was a callback to a stream that I did this morning with a crossword puzzle, where one of the answers was coconut crabs, and we decided that's what we're going to start with. So, Alan, how are you tonight? Welcome to the stream.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, thank you for being here. I'm excited to see where we end up. I'm going to actually get us onto the coconut crab. What are your thoughts on crabs in general? Are you pro crab? Yeah, pro crab?
Pro crab.
Yeah, growing up on the East Coast, I was definitely pro crab. Right by the Chesapeake Bay? Oh my gosh.
Shellfish in general.
Okay.
Big fan.
Yeah, seafood was always... I was never big on... I've grown to like oysters now that I've gotten them from the right areas. But like mussels, clams, uh, lobster, shrimp, like all those. That was my go-to. I always checked out the seafood section first.
When I lived in Olympia, we there was a place that was basically, it was a shucking shack. That's what it originally started out as, but then it turned into a restaurant. And it was called the Oyster House. And when it was a shucking shack for oysters, it was called the Oyster House. So they just kept the same name and then turned it into a restaurant. And man, you could get like, that's the first place where I'm like, yeah, I'd like to get a dozen oysters. And they're like, what kind?
Yeah.
What?
You want East Coast? You want West Coast? Like
we've got this kind, and like these are a little meatier, but they're smaller. And you've got these that are, yeah. And I'm like, ow.
Yeah.
Sure. How about we give me a half dozen of each? Because I don't know. Yeah. So, love that place.
Yeah, East Coast, for those people who aren't familiar with oysters, a simple breakdown is usually East Coast are larger, a little meatier, and a little brinier, and then West Coast is going to be smaller but creamier are usually the words to describe West Coast oysters. So if you're ever out and you want something to start with, do I want large ones or do I want small creamy ones? Hopefully that gives you a jumping off point. But I grew up with going to Baltimore Harbor or Annapolis Harbor, sitting down at large picnic tables, newspapers. They just bring out platters of crabs and throw them down, and you'd have a pitcher of beer, and you have your mallet, and you would just sit there and crack crabs, and you have Old Bay, and you'd have mustard, and then you would just sit there and crack crabs, and it'd be a social thing. Was just
I always wanted to do that.
And having crabs. Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun.
A place where they dump it in the middle of the table.
Yep, they just come in, they go, here's a platter, and then you can just get another platter of them. And the key was I had a friend who he's like, I want to do all the work first. So he would try to pull all the crab meat out first, but there was people always snagging from his stack when he wasn't looking. So it's like, yeah, you want to eat and crack. You don't want to risk it. So we're going to be looking at the coconut crab. I believe the clue this morning is that it was the largest land-living arthropod. And
something like that, yeah.
And this seems to ring true. It is a species of terrestrial hermit crab. It is known as the robber crab or the palm thief. And there's a beautiful picture of our specimen. He actually looks really cool. I like that coloring.
Huge.
Yeah.
They could blue. They can be different colors too.
I would like something next to it for size. I want like a banana or something.
I thought they had a picture.
They have one further down
somewhere. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh, looks like a bumblebee in this one. Looks like it's about to take flight. Yeah, it is
1849 depiction.
See, it is the world's largest living land-living arthropod in the world. It can weigh up to 9 pounds and can go 3 feet 3 inches in length. Whoa, from tip to tip. That's a big boy. I thought blue crabs were big. That's probably like twice as big.
That's one of those things that would scare the crap out of you. You're just hanging out on the beach, minding your own business, and then suddenly one of those kind of comes out of the underbrush and looks at you. You know, that's how a lot of horror movies begin.
Yeah, we used to go crabbing, and we would take it's like a crabbing cage, and the way crabbing cages work is if it was laying on the ground or like on the ocean floor, the doors would open on the sides, and then when you lifted it up, the cage would close. And we used to tie a raw chicken bone, or just raw chicken drumstick, that's the word I'm looking for, from the center of the cage, and you go down in the morning and you would place it in the water, and then you would come back in the evening time around like 6 or so, and you'd pull it out, and you would have like 6 or 7 crabs just hanging out in the cage. And you'd be like, all right, I guess this is what we're gonna cook tonight.
What we're doing.
Yep. I do miss that. I miss, like, now that I live in the Midwest, I miss good, solid, fresh seafood. Because Minnesota, they have walleye fish, but from what I understand, even their walleye, which is local, is then flown to Japan for processing and then flown back. So you're
what a weird thing,
right? Like
just what?
Yeah, it's cheaper to fly the fish out of the country, have them deboned, and fly them back than to have somebody here do it. Or maybe people here just don't want to do it.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, that does blow my mind. It's like, oh, this fish is local, but it's been out for a while.
We've got to fly it, halfway across the country, or halfway across the world twice.
A good 13-hour flight there, and a good 13-hour flight back, and you're like, so even the freshest is over a day old. Nice. Oh my god. So see, what do they eat? Let's see. Adult coconut crabs feed primarily on fleshy fruits, nuts, seed, and the pith of fallen trees, which is the little inner tissuey part that basically transports food, water through the tree. So it's eating that soft part. And it will eat carrion, which is the decaying flesh of dead animals, including human flesh, and other organic matter opportunistically. Anything left unattended on the ground is a potential source of food, which they will investigate and may carry away, thereby getting the alternative name of robber crab. Yes.
Fine.
Yes. And then mating, of course, occurs on dry land, but the females return to the edge of the sea by releasing fertilized eggs and then retreat back up the beach. The larvae that hatch are planktonic for 3 to 4 weeks before setting on the ocean floor, entering a gastropod shell and returning to dry land. Sexual maturity is reached after about 5 years. The total lifespan may be over 60 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Grandpapa crab.
Because lobsters can get pretty old too, right? Can't they get to like 100?
I think almost all of them, like that molt, seem to live for an extremely long time.
I gotta start molting.
I've been trying.
I gotta moisturize less. That way I can just get like a full skin shell of me.
It turns out removing skin is painful, so I don't suggest doing it.
So it's a quick and easy potato peeler, no problem. Start at the fingers. Ugh.
All I got is a Brillo pad.
Ugh. Let's see. So these are 60 years. I'm gonna look up lobsters. I want to see who's got the longer lifespan. What do we got going on here? Longevity. They even have a category for it. Lobsters live up an estimated 45 to 60 years in the wild. Okay, I thought it was 100.
Like, I think it's like jellyfish are effectively immortal. Really? Certain kinds of jellyfish, I believe, they're like effectively immortal because of the way that they regenerate.
Are they just like, is like osmosis? Are they like breaking off of themselves?
No, like they just live forever. I don't remember. I don't know if it's specific kinds, but
see what this says. Little is known of the life history of the jellyfish as the place on the seabed. Where I'm reading this part right here. Oops. Where the Bethnic forms of those species live have not been found. However, an asexually reproducing strobila form can sometimes live for several years, producing new medusa each year. An unusual species, formerly classified as, these are words I can't say, might be effectively immortal because of its ability under certain circumstances to transform from medusa back to the polyp stage, thereby escaping the death that typically awaits medusa post-reproduction if they have not otherwise been eaten by some other organism. So far, this reversal has been observed only in a laboratory. Well, there you go. Wow.
It's like they get middle-aged, they've had a couple of kids, they're like, you know what, I'm going back to being a teen.
Wow.
Could you imagine?
That sounds terrible and amazing at the same time. I would not want to be a teen again.
No.
Hi,
No.
Ray Ray. How are you? Wiki-Wednesday is a segment where we go down Wikipedia rabbit holes, and I have a different guest every week hang out with me. And this is Alan the Yellow-Eyed, who is another variety streamer here on Twitch. So he's hanging out with me. We started talking about coconut crabs, and then we started talking about the lifespan of them. And now we're looking at jellyfish, who apparently can live forever. This is where we get knowledge put up all in us. Yes. This is where we just learn things and dive into stuff, and we use Wikipedia throughout conversations to reinforce facts and find out new things that maybe we didn't know. So when you go to a restaurant, like I look for seafood as the first thing that I'm looking at. On Wiki, yeah, everything's on Wikipedia. Everything has to be found on Wikipedia. What is your go-to thing when you go to a restaurant? What are you looking for?
Oh, well, I mean, so we're talking like what? Because I mean, if you're going to a steak place, you're there for steak, right? Like, but if you're talking like general, everything's on the menu, pick what you want.
We'll say we'll put this scenario: you're on death row, and you have your last meal.
Oh, my last meal. Oh,
something subtle.
Well, see, that's a whole different. That's a whole different thing at this point. Yeah, no. Give me some crab. Give me just seafood and surf and turf. Honestly, like, give me some surf and turf.
Okay.
Give me a bloody steak.
Mm-hmm.
And non-bloody seafood.
That is important.
Generally, that's the best way to have it. Yeah, you don't want it the other way around.
Lobster tail or crab cake? How do you want your?
I love lobster tails very, very much. However, I'm not a huge fan of crab cakes. I love crab, but crab cakes, yes, crab cakes. I don't know, like while they're good, I feel like the onions and all the other stuff that goes into the mix takes away the crab flavor.
Because they're not supposed to be in there. I love crab cakes, but they have to be from Maryland. And I never trust anything that says they have Maryland-style crab cakes, because it has always been a lie. Always. But there's not supposed to be any onions in there or anything, or any, like, celery or carrots or whatever. It's just supposed to be the crab meat, like jumbo lump crab meat, and then enough, like, breadcrumbs just to hold it all together. And then, like, that's it. There's not really supposed to be...
It never had anything like what you just described. Ever.
I miss crab cakes. Jerry's Seafood. If you ever find yourself or Buddy's Crabs and Ribs. If you ever find yourself in Maryland, Annapolis, Baltimore, those are the places to go. Oh, Jerry's Seafood had this crab bomb. It was like a 10-ounce crab cake. Oh, my God. Like, all crab meat. I've never had Maryland crab, but I've had Nala crab. It's good. I like crawfish. I gotta go there and have a crawfish.
Great.
Yeah, I had a roommate when I lived in Florida who was from New Orleans, and she would make big batches of crawfish. Now it's my first time having crawfish, and I was like, okay, I feel like this is the right way to have it.
Served out of a giant pot.
Yeah, it's like little tiny lobsters.
Yeah,
it was great. It was like a lobster and a shrimp had a baby. And you're like, this makes sense to me. But those were amazing. I miss those feasts. She would just surprise. They would just come home from work and she'd be like, "Yeah, I went crazy and I bought a ridiculous amount of crawfish and I cooked them up." So help yourself. I'm gonna have to mute the stream and pretend you're talking about something else. Are you not crawfish? Is it making you squeamish, Beaver? Crawfish? What is the life expectancy of a crawfish? No, I am hungry. Let's see. Do they have longevity on here like the other ones did? Distribution and classification.
Eat too quick. They don't live very long.
Food, bait, pets. What? Crayfish are kept as pets in freshwater aquariums. They prefer foods like shrimp, pellets, and various vegetables, but will also eat tropical fish, regular fish food, algae wafers, Dwarfing. And small fish that can be captured with their claws. Wow. I wouldn't think to have like a pet crawfish. Huh.
I would just think about eating it the whole time. I couldn't have a pet one. Like, oh, Tommy, you're so delicious looking.
She's like, I'm gonna eat you at some point. I'm gonna have a one-bite snack. It's gonna be worth it.
Boiled you.
See, age? Does age come up? Just caught it average. Age. I couldn't find anything for life or lifespan. Age. These are all just parts of a word. Yeah, they don't really have how long they live in this article. But Australia has over, I was about to say, I thought they were going to say 100 species of crayfish. I'm like, that's ridiculous. But yeah, it doesn't say how long they live.
Need more than one?
I guess they've never lived long enough for people to find out. They've just eaten them. At least you're not in my sister's position. She got home from a deep clean at the dentist, and she can't eat or drink for a bit. Orange juice, she'll be fine. Just gargle with orange juice. Oh, my green screen is taking out my forehead. The glories of being a bald person. Green screen king. But that looks good. I would eat that.
Yeah, we have a giant, like one of those giant turkey fryer things that are like indoor, but you can just fill that sucker with like 3 gallons of water and just throw in the sausages, the crayfish, the crab, like the corn. You just throw it all in there, cover it, with seasoning, and just turn it on and let it boil. And oh man,
as much as I love seafood, I don't trust myself really cooking anything other than fish well. Like when it comes to like crab and lobster and like all that kind of stuff. I mean, shrimp probably. I feel comfortable with shrimp, but for some reason,
I've smoked lobster and I've grilled lobster tails before, and those turn out really well.
Smoking lobster sounds good.
Yeah, I'd fill it with like just basically split the shell, and then fill it with garlic, butter. Paprika, some other onions, whatever, and just put it in there, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and yeah.
You get some smoked paprika on that? Even get the smoked paprika in the smoked lobster? I'm a sucker. I do love smoke.
Put regular paprika. If you leave it in the smoker, it becomes smoked paprika by default.
True. I'm a sucker for smoked paprika. I put that stuff on everything. Frank's Red Hot. Oh my gosh. They're also known as crawfish, crawdads, crawdaddies, crawdads, freshwater lobsters, mountain lobsters, mud bugs, and yabbies.
Never heard yabbies.
Good old, give me some yabbies. I'm cooking up some yabbies. Do you have anything that you collect, Alan? We can get off the subject of food so Beaver doesn't eat his computer.
Dungeons and Dragons minis, but that's...
Okay. Let's see what they have on.
See
what they have on Dungeons and Dragons.
Company that makes them.
Are they the kind that you paint yourself?
So some of them are.
Okay.
Some of them become pre-painted. They used to come in. So a long time ago. And I say a long time ago, it was only a few years, but they basically sold these things as booster packs to a game. So they were all based on Dungeons and Dragons characters and whatnot, but it was also part of their like tabletop kind of war game that they had as well. So you would end up having to, in order to collect the entirety of a certain set, you would have to like buy a ton of these boxes to get, the entire set, and half the time you didn't. So then you'd have to go like online and then like buy the individual. Like it was like a collectible card game, but for miniatures is really what it came down to, and it was stupid expensive. So I just collected what I collected, and now they're actually getting real smart about it. Where instead of doing these like they still have these grab bag boxes of whatever, but you could also get like 5 orcs. So cool. Like I just need orcs. I can get 5 orcs in a package, and it's like worth spending a little more per figure because I'm getting exactly the ones that I need.
Yeah, that works out. Pay a little extra and not have the mystery bag.
Yep.
So that's good. Would you be down to share some of the pictures of the ones that you have in the Discord?
Oh, good God, yeah.
Sweet.
I have like I have like a lot of the dragons and the giants I have out sitting on top of my bookshelves. I'm looking at them right now. But then I have a cardboard box that's filled with like the little ones. It's just a smorgasbord of creatures.
How big is the biggest one?
Oh, that's the red dragon, and he is 2 feet tall.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, well, I mean, the game's Dungeons and Dragons. Dragons are a big deal.
Yeah, that's just like a big miniature figure.
Yeah, it's a macro miniature or something like that, and so yeah, it stands. Maybe about. I would have to measure it. I would have to get I have a measuring tape, and I have the dragon. Let me go over here and measure this thing.
I want to. We're gonna see the dragon. Hi, Nitro Rose. Night Rosebud? How are you? Welcome in. Also, hello, Null Herc. How are you? Hello, Gordo. Hello, Beaver. I'm gonna take this opportunity to make sure I say hello to everybody. Hello, Ray Ray. How are you? Welcome in. How tall?
It's 14 inches tall, or 13 inches tall, and with its wings out, its wings aren't fully extended. They're just kind of partially out, and that's 14 inches wide.
Okay. Whoa, my voice changed.
I'm turning into the dragon. So that's pretty big. That's over a foot tall and over a foot wide.
Yeah. And they have
That's pretty big.
like they have ones now. They actually have like a full like ship that you can get as a miniature that it's to scale.
Okay.
So essentially like it's a full scale sailing ship that comes apart, so you can look at the bottom decks and stuff like that by separating it out into its 3 separate pieces. So you'll have like the main deck, then you have the mid deck, and then you have the bottom of the ship, and those are like they're great, and I love them, but
Yeah.
I just can't. I don't play D&D on a table anymore. I play it all like online.
Okay.
So spending $300 on a ship
True.
just sitting on a shelf doesn't.
True. I mean, I would say, because I know that. Also, I'm doing, I'm doing well, Night Rose. I would say, like, when I watch the D&D online, it's usually just, like webcams of people, right? It's usually you usually have the master off to the side, and then you have the rest of them grouped together. Sometimes they're in their own little windows with their own descriptions and stuff like that. But I think it would be cool to see a D&D stream where maybe you yourself have a multicam setup and you have a table set up with all of your figures and stuff. So you'd have like one webcam on the cool figures and the ship and the stuff that you have, and then another webcam on just you, and like throwing in that visual element into the stream. I think that would be really cool, and I think that would set you apart from other D&D streamers.
And I actually had that idea back when, before the whole, stay away from me, everybody's ill.
Yeah.
And that was actually kind of what I was considering doing, is having an above. So essentially what I did, here's a little DM ingenuity for you. Essentially, I took a white sheet, like not even a sheet. I just went to like Joann's or one of those like fabric stores or whatever.
Yeah.
And just bought some off-white kind of cheap cloth, and started basically marked off 1-inch increments and drew a 1 inch square grid on this entire thing, and then I would throw it over the table and take a clear tablecloth and lay it over top of it.
Smart.
So then all you would have to do is just take your dry erase markers and just draw right on the table, and then like the players themselves, they could keep track of where they were in initiative by just writing on the table and keeping track of their spells right on the table. And then you take a little Kleenex or whatever and wipe it off and continue on. And that's kind of how I did it for the longest time, and it made it real easy to, like, you didn't have to prep a bunch of maps and things like that. So if they went somewhere you didn't expect, you could just, okay, well, here's this cave, and you're just making it up as you go along. Which is like, 50% of it. And honestly, that's where I feel I shine as a DM. Like, I do a lot of pre-made stuff, and it's only just because of my job and everything else. I don't have time to do the build all my own stuff like I used to. So I do a lot of pre-made stuff, but then every once in a while, like, I see Null, he's in the chat. They would go off and do something completely out of the ordinary. And some of the best sessions of D&D that I have run in recent memory, none of it was scripted. I made everything up on the fly as we were doing it. And it turned out to be some of the most interesting and fun characters that I've ever come up with. And things like that. Like, even, Goober, my puppet, he was a D&D creation. I made him up one day playing D&D back in 2005. So
I think it would be cool, and it'd be really charming for you to do something like that, where you had the layout and stuff, and you're just drawing and trying to keep up with stuff as it's going. I think would be, it would add a really cool element to it.
I've actually thought about this. Like, we're in the middle of a campaign right now, so I don't want to switch up what we're doing presently. But I'm highly considering that the next time around that I am just going to ad hoc it. So instead of making these long drawn out plans, I'm going to start with a simple beginning scenario and see what the players do. And then before the next one, go, okay, this is what y'all did. That's going to change this. So now we're going to do, and then so I'm not going to make it like a big drawn out thing. It's more going to be like, okay, here's the general idea of where we're going. I'm going to throw some stuff out there and just react to what the players do and figure it all out.
But I've never played D&D, but my buddy was explaining it to me because we were going to try doing a single player adventure, and he's a huge improviser. So he's like, what I do is I go, okay, here's our starting location, and then I'm going to give them this, and then I try to think of like 3 or 4 different scenario, like decisions that they might come up with, and I go, okay, if they say this, I'm going to put them here. If they say this, I'm going to put them here. If they say this one, I'll put them here. If they say that one, like, I'll still put them here. So he just comes up with a very loose, he's like locations and possible things that they might come up with, and then he's like, and then I just pick the closest decision, and that's the route I run with. He goes like, and then we just run that route. He's like, I'm improvising. He's like, it's mostly just locations and possible decisions that they might make. He's like, but the rest I'm making up.
It's super easy to do in person, and it's probably one of my favorite aspects of being a DM is just off the cuff making up characters and making up whatever as things go. But it also can be like, sometimes you just get thrown for a loop. And one of my more favorite things about being a DM is that the players will screw themselves by just saying things. Like, you'll be like, and as night comes across, off in the distance you hear the howling of of what sounds like a wolf. Hey, is it a full moon tonight? And in my head, I'm like, what is? Oh, yes.
Well, now it is.
It is a full moon, and so they basically, and that's the whole thing about the the group storytelling. it's really what I like to do. Like when one of the things I like to do as a player is another thing that I like for my players to do as a DM is tell me what you're like, describe this attack, tell me what you're doing. Let me know so I can visualize this whole thing at the same time. Hey, I'm going to do this thing. Well, explain to me how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Like,
paint a picture.
Let me know what this is. And it helps put everybody at the table kind of more into it on how deep they want to kind of imagine the world that they're living in. But also, it's not a game where I do all the storytelling and they just participate in it. Like, you are also telling the story from your character's perspective.
Yeah.
So do what your character would say. If you're kind of a jerk and you are in a very important meeting with someone that isn't necessarily a friend but hasn't shown themselves to be an enemy, you act like a dick to them, they're probably going to be, less than happy to ever see you again, and maybe that'll affect things down the road. Maybe it won't, but I'll give you bonuses. Like there in the new Dungeons and Dragons, there's a thing called inspiration, which is essentially like a free bonus that they can use whenever they feel like it. I'm free. Like, you do something that is completely against. It is perfectly within character, but against your own personal interest. Like, as a player, you get inspiration because you're playing your character. And Null is a huge,
Yeah, he just said, my biggest issue playing this game is I can't help but hassle the NPCs.
And see, I was talked about that individual that wasn't necessarily a friend. He was literally egging this lady on. She had like this entire household filled with guards and everything else, and some other things outside that they didn't even know about. And he was just, and she wasn't their enemy yet. She could have been. She was part of the bad guy group. But she was more concerned with making her rival look bad. So if she sent the party on their way to mess with this other person and screw up his plans, it made her look better to that group. So essentially, she was more worried about sending them against her enemies than anything else. But he nearly got everybody into a fight. Yeah.
Sleekboss says, I play a gnome monk who constantly drops bits of useless, untimely advice to everyone. That sounds yeah. No, Sleek plays a lot of D&D. Hi, Sleek. How are you? Welcome in.
You get me started on D&D. We can talk about this the rest of the first stream. I can tell you that right now. So I tell people a lot, like when you look at D&D and you look at the race, a lot of people are like, well, they all the classes and stuff, like a fighter looks like a fighter looks like a fighter. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but that's just the mechanics. I can make you 5 different fighters that have the same exact mechanics. However, they are all completely different people. And when you go back and you think about the games that you've played before, you don't think about how cool that I had 18 in strength. You're talking about that time that when it was a clutch situation and everybody was on the ground bleeding, and then you miraculously tried this off-the-wall move and rolled a 20 and killed the dragon, saving everybody. That's what you remember. You remember that.
Yeah.
You don't remember your stats, right? You remember the characters. And that's what I really try to push. Make a character. Make someone that you would think would be fun to be in this world.
It sounds like the Pixar model of making movies. Pixar has always said all of their movies are based on character. Character first. Like, those characters are going to know backwards and forwards, and that's usually what makes people fall in love with their movies, is character first.
So Pingus, who's in the chat right there.
Hi, Pingus. How are you? Welcome in.
He is one of a pair of kobold brothers. Kobolds are basically these very small dog-like lizard creatures. They have like a voice that kind of yippy and whatnot, but they think they're kin to dragons and so on and so forth. They have very large egos for very small bodies, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Pingus's character Tick and his brother Tack. So just wait, it gets better. When they're in civilized lands, one stands on the other's shoulders and they put a trench coat on to become Toe.
Tack and Toe.
And so, like, mechanically, there's nothing in D&D that works, but there's no mechanic for that, right?
Yeah.
But as the DM was just like, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting idea that I've never seen before, and it's freaking hilarious. So we're gonna go with this, right?
Yeah.
So and it's hilarious because nobody seems to notice that it's two kobolds in a trench coat when they're in civilized lands. Nobody's figured it out yet. It'll be interesting if they ever do.
So
But-
when you do table stuff, do you ever have anything set up like what's up on the screen right now?
So those right there are called Dwarven Forge, and those are some high quality, top tier type peripherals, I guess, for D&D. Like you can go online and look at, like, they do these giant layouts with these things. You might actually be able to look up Dwarven Forge. It might even be in Wikipedia, but they have all sorts of things, and it's always kickstarted, and they tend to be
Like this kind of stuff, or even more?
that's small. They will do, like, when they're giving out something like brand new, they will do, like, I think one of their newest ones was like a village essentially, and they did like a full-on with a town square and individual houses all over the place, and they tend to make pretty good money. They every time that they've released, they've made their Kickstarter goals. So,
Jeez. So I'm imagining like it would be like a Warhammer style battlefield, where they have like all the textures and the hills and all that kind of stuff, like that sort of a thing.
Yeah, they have that kind of stuff as well. However, in D&D, it's more of a simulationist than a realistic type game system. So they abstract a lot of the systems. So you can see on that picture where, like, there's individual squares on the floor.
Yeah.
Those are all each 1 inch squares. A 1 inch square is a 5 foot by 5 foot area.
Okay.
So in D&D, combat is essentially a medium or small creature basically owns a 5 foot by 5 foot square, and that's your area. That's what you're defending. That's your particular piece. So anybody who's within a 5 foot square next to you is considered adjacent as far as like attacking them and things like that.
Okay.
So that's why you'll see all the individual little squares there, and essentially, they did it originally because original D&D actually used inches, because it was based on initial D&D way back was actually made by people who were wargamers. And so it literally would talk about movement would be 4 inches. Like, that's how it would explain how far something could move, because it was based on wargaming. And as time has gone on, they've gotten away from doing that and then expressed everything in feet. And then in order to make it easier for people who play on a grid, 5 feet is a square, and that's kind of how they abstracted all that stuff down.
Wow. Would something like this come painted, or would they have painted that?
Yeah, no, it's their stuff is all painted.
Nice.
And so you would pay, like, you know, like that would be like $100, $150 for that kind of, for what you're seeing, like, right there. And that's just the terrain piece, like the walls and the floor. That's not all the other extra stuff that you can see there.
I'm intrigued by this little mushroom area that they've built.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that area. It's very Alice in Wonderland. Reminds me of the giant caterpillar. Well,
there might be one in there.
That is cool. Wow. Do you own any wall stuff like this?
No, that's one of the only things that I never really dug into, and only because it was drawing is so much quicker, right?
Yeah.
Like you need a cave. Oh, let me look through these parts and find. No, just draw it out. Done.
Yeah, true. This kind of locks you in. Even if you were like, "Hey, this is what we're gonna start with," like, it's more linear.
Yeah, you have what you have, and yeah, so it's. But yeah, it's more like if you're playing on the table, having stuff like that really helps. I had people make models out of Lego, and they actually. Yes. They made a ship out of Lego, and the way they actually put the Lego down into like 1 inch by 1 inch squares. So like the deck of the ship was already laid out, so you could have your little figurine in the right spot as you were having battles on the ship, on the deck of the ship.
Whoa.
And stuff like that. Like, so
Legos would be a really smart alternative.
Yeah. And people use minifigs all the time for characters and everything else because a lot of people just have them already lying around. So,
yeah.
Especially like with the Lord of the Ring ones.
Ooh, yeah.
You've got wizards, you've got,
Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, and like you're golden. Oh, you see, I find that minis and set pieces like that are better for in-person games, is what Beaver says.
Yeah. And I would agree with that.
But I think it would be cool and intriguing to tune into a D&D stream on Twitch that had some sort of visual element other than people, because I think this would make it more fun to something like this would make it more fun to be a fly on the wall and watch a D&D game. Like seeing things like this and, people like playing out their characters and stuff like that, to me that just doesn't play out as much when you're watching it on a stream with just webcams on everybody.
Yeah,
so I think marrying them in some simple, manageable way, I think could set you apart from other D&D streamers.
Well, so the one thing that I do kind of different is that, one, I don't have cameras on everybody because I don't require, I'm not playing with streamers. These people all the people I'm playing with were essentially people I taught how to play D&D through my stream.
And that's even better.
And they wanted to play, and so they got together and got me not a subscription, but they purchased the license for Fantasy Grounds, which is essentially a virtual tabletop.
Okay.
That is specifically built for role-playing games, but Dungeons and Dragons being kind of one of their bigger pieces of it. So when I do it, I actually have that screen of Fantasy Grounds up, so people see the map, they see the character tokens on the map of where they actually are, like in where they are in the castle and things like that. So I definitely have a lot more of there's a tactical feel to combat because it's not theater of the mind, because you're literally looking at where everyone's positioned on the field.
Yeah.
And moving around and things like that. So I do kind of have that it's a little bit the downside to that is that that's one of the reasons why I do pre-made things, because the maps are already there.
Okay.
And I don't have to go and draw. Like I can't just go in and draw. Well, with the new one I can, but that's a whole other thing. But it's easier. It's easier essentially if it's already done, because it's already loaded into the system, and then you can just right-click it and say share with players, and then it pops up. And,
yeah. Is there a spot where you can build custom ones, or do you just have to pick?
So in the new version of it, yes, I have to buy. There's packs that you basically buy, and it lets you kind of put them together like tiles.
Okay.
Almost the same way as what you're looking at right here, but in a digital format.
Kind of like I'm imagining like Tabletop Simulator. Are you familiar with that game program?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm imagining something like that.
Yeah, it does something kind of similar to that, where essentially it's just tiles and you can lock them all together and then you save it off as map 123 or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then whenever you need to use it, you bring it up, you pull the characters over into it, and now they're in it and they can explore it.
Yeah. And then Sleek Mouse says, we do ours online using Roll20.
Yep. Roll20 is another one. So there's pros and cons to all sorts of various tabletops. Roll20 you can use for free 100%. Like Fantasy Grounds they have basically kind of a tiered licensing system where if you have an ultimate license, it means you can play in anybody's game and anybody can play in your games. If you have a standard license, it means that you can play in anybody's game. And I believe, and other licensed people can play in your game. And then there's the demo, which is free, but you can't run any games, really, because you can't have more than, I think, one player in the demo version. But you can join ultimate licenses.
Okay.
So I have an ultimate license, so anybody else can just get the demo version for free.
Okay.
So I just paid extra 100 and something for the ultimate license, and then that way anybody who jumps in with a game with me they just got to get the demo program.
Okay. That's not bad. Yeah, and here it says each set runs between $70 and $120.
Yeah.
Wow.
Depending on what they have, and some of them are more expensive if they have more layers and details and whatnot.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
There's so much, man. Like you can go to Kickstarter at any given time and just look at like D&D tools, and you'll find all sorts of stuff. I'm looking at a thing that I bought. Well, I got from Kickstarter. Essentially, so there's a thing. Essentially, like if you're asleep or if you've been knocked unconscious, like it puts certain things like you can't move if you're paralyzed, for example, right?
Okay.
And there's like usually a list of things that you are no longer able to do. I have a product where literally it's just cards that says paralyzed on one side, and on the other it shows all the things that you are now affected by because you're paralyzed. So it's like as the DM, it's like, oh, you got attacked by this, roll your Constitution save. Oh, you failed. Well, you're paralyzed. Here's your card. Now you know all the things that apply to you, and it just little tools like that. Just tons of them.
And then Beaver says there's a documentary about Dwarven Forge called the Dwarvenaut that he thought was really good. Where did you see that, Beaver? The Dwarvenaut. Wow.
On the Netflix.
Yeah, I saw it on Netflix. Hey, Big Ed, how are you? Welcome in. And then, I had a question and it completely left my mind. Well, those are some pretty cool sets.
Yeah,
I like that.
I
was surprised when we were at PAX South, like in the game area, how many different dice rollers and everything that people had, and the custom like 3-panel boards,
the wooden DM screens.
Like all those things. So cool. Yeah, that was mind blowing to me as someone who's never done D&D, and then like seeing all of these things that people have created. Was really cool.
Like peripherals that you don't need, but people will buy because they look cool.
Yeah, I know I would be a sucker for that if I were like invested in it. I know I'd be one of those people who's like, I need the visual things. I would totally be that person. Yep, I backed a bunch of those things on Kickstarter. Nice. Dude, that's a sweet set. I recently got the Foundry VTT for my D&D stuff. What's VTT?
Virtual tabletop.
Oh.
I've heard a lot about a Foundry. I haven't had really a chance to check it out yet.
Beaver's I might have a few D&D items. There might be a few things.
Not even counting the books. Like I'm looking over at my bookshelf right now, and between 3.5 edition, 4th edition D&D, 5th edition D&D, Pathfinder, which is basically 3.5 version of D&D that was carried on by a different company. Like, you just add, like, I've got, 35, 40 books over there?
Jeez.
And that's not even counting other games. I have Numenera, which is made by someone who worked on a version of D&D. Shadowrun, which is made by a completely different company. And it's kind of a completely different type of world. I've got Cyberpunk Red sitting on my desk over here for role-playing. I role-play. I love role-playing games.
What about Cyberpunk 2077?
So that's basically Cyberpunk Red.
Oh.
So Cyberpunk 2020 was the original game that came out in the 1984, I believe it was. Matter of fact, you can Cyberpunk 2020 if you wanna. You're on the thing.
I like Beaver says it's been a while, but he'll still buy books and miscellaneous minis.
Oh yeah. It's just there, but yeah. So Cyberpunk 2020 was the original game that came out, and then because of the CD Projekt Red, that came out with the new one. The new version of the game is called Cyberpunk Red.
Oh.
And just kind of update some things, makes some of the stuff a little less fiddly. Completely different type of system than Dungeons and Dragons. It's another game that I kind of want to run on stream, but unfortunately there's not an easy way for me to do that, so I have to kind of create the rule set myself. But yeah, that's the creator right there.
Oh. Biggest says, I've spent the last year thinking about running an RPG for the first time in 25 years, but kept losing my saving throws versus laziness.
Yes.
I imagine it's quite the undertaking to be a dungeon master, especially for like a multiple series campaign.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It can be a lot of work, but it can also be a lot of fun. My wife used to laugh at me because when I had the time to work on my own stuff, essentially when I would build whatever I was working on, when I was doing all my own stuff, I would sit down and go, okay, so last week they did this and this and this. Mm-hmm. And I remember that they pissed off this other one before. So let's bring this guy back, this time with more people, because he was pissed off that he lost the first time. So now we're going to have him come back. And, you know, you can when you do that, you can kind of bring these NPCs back. And if you can keep bringing somebody back over and over again, the players really start to hate these NPCs. And when you can really hear them getting pissed off that this guy is back, it's, as a DM, you're just like, yes, I have them.
The power.
They will do everything in their power to try to kill this guy now. Let's use that against them.
So sticker for trying says, my wife is learning how to make resin things. She's going to make me some dice. That's pretty cool. Beaver says, I've been itching to play. The most fun I've ever had was when I was running games, though. Okay. Pingus, Purple only used to laugh at you. I'm pretty sure she still does.
Purple's my wife.
Count me in. Oh, count me in if you need players. Okay, so Sleek Mouse wants to play with Beaver. Beaver, you're now taking on the role of a dungeon master.
Congratulations.
You heard it here first. It is now set in stone. This VOD will be uploaded to YouTube, so that will be a legal binding contract. So that is the thing now. I had some players last Saturday that befriended an owl bear and named him Swole Steve. I like that name. Yeah, there's a lot of. Yeah, I want to play D&D. I think it would be a lot of fun.
I tell people, like, do you like stories? Do you like telling stories? Do you like acting? Do you like improvising? Do you like figuring out problems? Because those are all things that you do in D&D. And almost anybody that plays, there's something in D&D that probably appeals to them in some way, shape, or form, as far as like, if you love to just act and tell stories and take on the role of somebody, this game has that. If you like tactics-based fighting, depending on whether or not you're using, grid and all this stuff like that, this game has that. So, it's got a little bit of everything. So I think it can be appealing to just about anybody.
And going back to the cyberpunk thing, is Cyberpunk 2077 based off of this D&D game?
Yeah, this is what it's based off of. The actual Pondsmith, which is the creator that picture's on there. Yeah. He was one of the he was with them, and by them I mean CD Projekt Red, the entire way while building 2077 as basically a reference of the world and all that. So they literally brought the guy in and said, "Tell us."
Wow. Are there any other games, like mainstream games, that are based off of the D&D of a similar type?
Like first person like that? Not
or,
really.
Or like just any game. Like I never would have guessed that Cyberpunk 2077 was based off of a D&D game. It's like The Witcher or like any other like AAA title game where you're like, oh yeah, that is based off a version of a D&D.
Yeah, so Shadowrun is there's been a few different Shadowrun games that have come out, but that's all based on the Shadowrun role playing game, which is out by Catalyst Game Labs. They actually now they've made Numenera. They made a game for Numenera, which is another RPG. They now have Baldur's Gate 3 out, which is based on the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Bloodline, Vampire, Werewolf. So Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines, which the original one came out, a while ago.
So yeah, Bloodline sounds really familiar.
They're making Bloodlines 2, which is supposed to be coming out, I think, this year. That's based on White Wolf Games, which is all part of the so there's White Wolf has basically, you have mage, you have vampire, and you have werewolf, and all those 3 different games combined together into what they basically call the World of Darkness.
Oh. Is it Assassin's Creed Bloodlines or Castlevania Bloodlines?
No.
Oh, here's Vampire Mad the Masquerade Bloodlines.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the original. That's the first one, and they are making a second one, and this is based off a tabletop role playing game.
Okay. What was the other one you said? What was that in the chat with Baldur's Gate?
Yep, Baldur's Gate.
Did I mean Baldur's Gate?
No.
How am I spelling it?
Balders.
Baldur's Gate.
I actually have I have a blanket that sits on the back of my chair, which is actually a map of one of the D&D cities. That's how much I'm into this.
So this one, Baldur?
D-U-R. Yeah, that's that. So the original Baldur's Gate, that came out. You can probably find that.
Oh, this one's like has like original Xbox, PlayStation 2, Linux.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Wow. I've never heard of it. We have Baldur's Gate, originally 1998. Windows and Mac OS.
Yeah, and then the 2 came out in 2001, and then Baldur's Gate 3 is currently in development by Larian Studios, but it's actually out. It's early access kind of.
Okay.
Right now, so.
See, where'd it come out for Xbox? Xbox One is Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition. What does this Enhanced Edition look like? What do we got going on here for screenshots? That is a terribly tiny picture.
I think they redid a lot of, not redid, but they remastered a lot of the games. So that might, no, that's not the remaster, because the remasters are on Steam.
Okay. text out of that. Let's use it as close as I can get on that photo. Enhanced comes with all the DLCs. That makes sense, like the definitive edition.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh.
Yeah, Temple of Elemental Evil is still right now my go-to as best Dungeons and Dragons game because I'm big into the tactics portion of it, and Temple of Elemental Evil really got 3.5 combat like as near perfect as you could. So I really enjoyed that one.
Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yep.
Ooh. 1985.
Yeah, so that's when the original Temple of Elemental Evil Adventure Path came out, essentially. I want to say Atari did that. And now everybody's in there talking about... So there are different worlds within the D&D multiverse. And a lot of like what they're talking about, Dragonlance is a different world. Dark Sun is a different world. And Eberron's another world that's different. Planescape is another, and I don't want to call them necessarily worlds, but they're, because some of them are worlds and some of them are different planes of existence. But they're all related to where you can actually travel to each other with these magical spaceships called spelljammers. Whatever.
Heck yeah.
I am such a nerd. God, why do I know all this stuff?
I like I like Spelljammers. That's a cool term.
Yeah, that Spelljammer is actually it was considered it's a campaign setting, a Spelljammer, but essentially, yeah, it's a ship that can fly, between all these different worlds. They're spell powered spaceships. That's what they are.
And don't feel self-conscious about your knowledge on D&D, because I know way too much stuff about the Muppets, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, everyone has their thing that they just know a ridiculous amount of information about, and you're like, why do I know this? Why do I know this? But side note, the Muppet Show, all 5 seasons for the first time are going to be available on Disney Plus in February. It is the first time that all 5 seasons, up until now, it's only been seasons 1 through 3 you've been able to buy on DVD. So they are putting all 5 full seasons of the original Muppet Show on Disney Plus next month. So I'm excited because I've actually, outside of YouTube clips, I've never seen seasons 4 to 5. I started D&D with the red box set. Okay, we'll see you in March then. I can binge watch it in a weekend.
Now the song's stuck in my head.
Who's your favorite Muppet? Let's go with that. Gonzo. Good old Jerry, not Dave Goelz. Yeah, because you have a puppet. You got one from my buddy Gordon Smooter over at the Puppet Forge. He builds a lot of my stuff. Actually, I don't have... He built Dumpleping. That's the one I have with me. I think the other ones I put down in storage. But he is the guy who built the little hand puppet that I've used for my morning segments. And hanging out with Daisy now on Thursday nights. But you had a puppet built by him.
I did. That's Goober.
You had a cool Goober.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody in chat, who's your favorite Muppet? Like, throw that out there. So what do you like about Gonzo? What relates you to Gonzo?
He's slightly insane.
Yeah.
Which is kind of me. Like, he's a little bit nuts. But he also is 100% true to who he is, regardless of what anybody else about him.
Yeah. I have to say,
doesn't try to be anything other than Gonzo.
That is true. Gonzo grew on me. I didn't care for him much as a kid, but over the years, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Gonzo is a really cool character. There's a lot going on with Gonzo that I never really focused on. But yeah,
the hair on the chicken girlfriends.
Yeah.
There's
Camilla and all them. Yeah, and Dave Goelz is one of the last original. Well, now he is officially the last original Muppet puppeteer that still works with the Muppets. He is the last one.
I'm trying to think the last thing that came out of Jim Henson's workshop that I think I've watched, and not counting the Muppet Christmas Carol and stuff like that, which is kind of like a yearly watch thing. Like, not counting that, I think Mirror Mask was like the last thing that I have watched, which is a weird.
That is an odd. That was an odd one. I know I've only seen it once. Mirror Mask. Yeah, that was 2005.
Yeah.
So you didn't see any of the newer Muppets?
No.
Muppet movies or anything like that?
I haven't seen, like, I guess they did that television show or whatever where they were making it kind of like a, I don't know, from what I didn't see it, so I don't know if this is true, but it seemed like it was supposed to be like some kind of Real Wives of Muppet Street, kind of whatever, like the Real Wives of Sesame Street or something to that effect. And so like Piggy and Kermit were divorced or whatever and still trying to make the show work even though they weren't together anymore. And I'm just like, I want stupid, silly fun with my Muppets. I don't want real life BS, like divorcee who gets the kids on the weekend Muppets. I don't want that.
Yeah, they were trying to go edgier with them, and it didn't really work out. Just real quick, thank you, Harbor, for that raid. If you guys aren't following Seismic Harbor, he's another variety streamer on here, and this sound effect is for you, Harbor. You know that. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the show didn't last a season, and they tried like changing out the showrunner halfway through to try and save it, but it didn't hit well with fans. And I think that whole mockumentary style of shooting, where it was kind of shot like The Office or Modern Family, where you had like the cutaways, the confessions, the camera and stuff. By that point, that model or format of show had already run its course. So it was.
Hold on. Wasn't there a Muppet movie where? Oh, what was the name of that one? Where like they were brothers and one of them was a Muppet and the other one wasn't. Is that a Muppet movie?
Yeah, but the one with Jason Segel.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, that was the Muppets 2011.
Okay, so I did see that one. So I take that back. I just don't remember much of it. I remember watching it.
That seems to be the consensus of the movie.
And then I don't remember anything about it.
And then I tell people, then there was Muppets Most Wanted, and they're like, wait, they did another one after that one? I'm like, yeah, they did another one after that one, and nobody saw it. So they tried one again like 3 years later, and those are the two projects that I did. Those were my biggest Kermit projects, were those two movies. Before that, I did a parade down Disneyland for their What Would You Celebrate parade, and it was a promotion they were doing where if you went to a volunteer place and you volunteered your time for a day, you'd get a free day in the park. And the guys who did Kermit and Miss Piggy could not commit to doing a parade every day in the parks, so they had to find other people to do it, and I was already working in the park, so I went through a workshop with those guys, and then they chose me, and I did those. And then from there, when they did those newer movies, they did it at the El Capitan Theater, which was a single theater movie house on Hollywood Boulevard. It's right across the street from Grauman's Chinese Theater, and it's next to Jimmy Kimmel Live. And Disney doesn't own it, but they kind of do all their movie premieres there. And their tradition at that theater is to do a live show before the screening of every movie, and the live show is somehow themed to the movie. If you're seeing a nature show, there's probably like a reptile person there that has exotic animals. If it's a Toy Story movie, it might be something with the Toy Story characters from the park, like doing some sort of montage or medley or some sort of little tiny like 15-minute live show. And for the Muppet movies, they did live sing-alongs with Kermit and Miss Piggy. And I did Kermit for the live shows before the Muppets and the Muppets Most Wanted. And Muppets Most Wanted was the last Muppet project I did. That live show was the last project I did with them. But yeah, people didn't really see those. The first one did well because I think it was just the nostalgia thing. And then I feel bad. The Muppets have pretty much had their heyday, and they've constantly been trying, and then they've never really.
Wasn't there another movie? It's not a Muppet movie, But there was another movie that had puppets in it where it was like a cop.
The Happy Time Murders.
Is that what it was called? I don't remember. I remember the scene. How do I say that in a way that is PG-13?
Yeah, it was a raunchy, dirty movie, and I find that when it's the silly string scene where he's supposed to like
that's what I was like. I'm like the silly string scene is the one I'm thinking of where and
they tried to go super adult with it, and the thing about like crude, raunchy humor is that it gets tired really quick. So unless you're really clever with it and you can fit it in a clever way and make it work, if you're just constantly just pounding people with dirty, raunchy, and that's what you're bringing to the table, and that goes to just any improv, not even just puppetry. It kind of just wears itself out, and then people are just kind of tired of it, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I just remember the silly string thing and just laughing because it was just so ridiculous.
Okay, my two favorite scenes, and then I feel like they for lack of a better term, blew that moment in the trailer, like, because then you're like, oh, like they showed all the best parts. Like my other favorite part of that I thought was really clever is there's an octopus. Here we go, the Happy Time Murder. I'm trying to pull it up. There we go. There's an octopus that's milking a cow. So the octopus has like a hand on each of the udders, and he's just like going to town, like milking this cow, and the cow's like, oh my god, and like you're not to. It's like in the back room of something where you're not supposed to see it, and like to me, I was like, okay, that's really clever, but like that's it, like, but the octopus milking the cow, I thought was a really funny visual to see, but.
Yeah, like I never actually seen this movie. It's one of those ones that it's like I don't even know.
Don't see it.
Don't see. Just avoid it.
It was in and out of theaters in 2 weeks. It didn't last long at all. Yeah, see, the budget was 40 to 47 million, and it made 27 million back. So it barely made like half back, like 2/3 back. It was in and out so quick. Because what had happened in that scenario is that Brian Henson had been talking about doing the Happy Time Murders forever. And he was always doing screen tests for it and like little things. And the project was always kind of semi-active every year, but he wasn't really doing anything with it. And then his sister Lisa got the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance greenlit at Netflix. And Brian went, wait a minute, I want a project that's high profile. So then he hurried up and greenlit the Happy Time Murders, and they just kind of like rushed their way through it, and it didn't hit with audiences.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hi, Lemons. You have to take breaks from in between the poundings, otherwise you chafe. Thank you, Lemons. And Lala, I just got here. I'm so confused. Tipsy's making lewd gestures and talking about milking in back rooms. Hi, Lala. Good to see you. I'm hanging out with Alan. We're just talking about stuff. We started talking about puppetry and the Happy Time Murders and all that kind of stuff.
And silly string scenes.
And then I started talking about milking the cow.
So wait, that actually was a Henson. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, this was a Brian Henson project.
I didn't realize it was like part of. I thought it. I really didn't think it had anything to do with the Henson family at all. I thought it was just something somebody was doing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was produced, I think, partly written by him as well, and directed by him. Like that was Brian Henson's baby, and I remember being embarrassed. Like I went to the movie theater because a lot of my friends worked on it, and I felt embarrassed watching it in the theater. Like I was rolling my eyes so many times. Like this just isn't good. Like and with the power that the Hensons have in terms of like drawing a crowd for something, and then just being like, this is gonna set us back like 10-20 years. Like no one's gonna be looking to work with puppets right now, especially after something like this. So cool.
Wow.
Cool.
If you go down to accolades, So many Golden Raspberry Awards.
Yeah.
Nominations.
Worst picture, worst director, worst actress, worst supporting actor, worst screen combo, and worst screenplay.
Worst film. They won that
They
from the Houston Film Critics Society.
They also won worst actress, Melissa McCarthy. Yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And apparently, like, Sesame Workshop, that is not owned by the Henson Company. A lot of people think the Hensons own Sesame Street. They don't. It's its own thing. Was suing the Henson Company for their... actually, I think it's right here. Yeah, lawsuit. For their tagline, "No Sesame, All Street."
Yep.
Yep. I saw it. I laughed, but it wasn't something that I was glad I did. Yeah. For somebody who, like... It's different for, like, you know, since I work in the field, I'm looking at it through a different lens. And I thought it had so much potential, but then it weighed too much on crude humor.
Vulgar comedy, yeah. I mean, they could have probably had a couple of crude jokes here and there, but then basically just told it as a standard kind of crime thriller, just with puppets, you know?
Yep. I was rooting for it, and well, the thing about puppetry is, like, there's so few opportunities for things to actually get greenlit and get seen, that there's so much weight and pressure on the projects that do, that it hurts a lot when one doesn't do well. And for I feel like just recently it's all just been swings and misses with, like, Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. I really liked that series, but it just didn't hit well with the general public, so that didn't get greenlit for another season. And then this project, and then the recent Muppet projects that have been kind of lackluster. So it looks like people aren't interested in puppetry as an art form, but I think it all just comes down to the projects that they're using puppets with and the writing, really. Everything comes down to the writing.
Like, Team America used marionettes, which had been dead as a medium of storytelling for years and years and years. And these two jackholes said, you know what? Let's make a musical with marionettes.
Yep.
And somehow it was this phenomenal.
Love that movie.
Oh, so here. That movie came out while I was in Iraq in 2004 during, that whole Iraq war thing. Mm-hmm. And we watched that movie probably 100 times because we got it from a vendor, and it may or may not have rhymed with hootbag.
Okay.
Which is always, like, it's always funny because you get they sell stuff and we're allowed to buy them, so you're getting movies for like $3.
Yeah,
do it all the time, and it's kind of funny that we're allowed to bring those home as long as we're only bringing one copy of every movie.
Yeah,
like, you're like, okay, yeah, you're allowed to bring those back, but if you bring it back like 20 copies, they're like, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I love this movie, but apparently it was like a huge headache because not only for, like, the puppeteers, but also for Trey and Matt, because they had never worked with the medium before, and they were so used to working in animation where they would want to make changes on the fly and really quick and right now. And so the puppeteers would be like, well, if you want to make this, even just like the smallest quick change, like, we have to reset where everybody is and choreograph out how that's going to work. So even like the quickest change would take a couple of hours to do. So they had a hard time, like, trying to get Trey and Matt to lock into an idea and then be married to that idea. They would keep wanting to change it. So it turned into huge.
I mean, have you ever watched, what is it, 5 Days to Air?
No.
Which is so it was basically a the making of South Park, and it was about the creative process that they used, or it's either 5 days to air or 7 days to air or something like that. And essentially they were notorious for giving Comedy Central the tape to play the day of airing.
Oh, I'm sure.
And like it was like their whole what was the name? I believe it was like 5 days to air or 7 days to air.
Find it in their South Park like description. Let's see if
that might be there.
Maybe if I just type in the word air. Oh, there's 46 references to air.
Of course there is. Cut out animation. See, I was in college when South Park first came out, so I got to sitting there with a bunch of college buddies watching Jesus and Santa Claus beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
And then Cartman's anal probe being, I think, the first like full real episode after they were picked up or whatever, and just going, oh my God, this is terrible and also freaking hilarious.
Yeah, they do a really good job of riding that line. And during its early stages, finished episodes of South Park were hastily recorded in D2 and then sent to Comedy Central for airing in just a few days' time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they would just kind of rush through it.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested on why that's not here, because maybe it didn't run for very long, but I sat and watched just to watch those two. They're in the writer's room and just how the ideas are bouncing off of each other, and they're figuring out what the lesson is. And
I think isn't Bill Hader in it?
Yes.
He's sitting at the writer's table during that thing. I have seen that. Was that on Netflix?
It was on Comedy Central, I thought, because I remember watching it.
Yeah, I know I bought it. And I definitely didn't watch it on Comedy Central, because I saw it just like within the last few years.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's like 5 days to air or 7 days to air.
Yeah.
It was something essentially like, we have this much time to do it, and it's 6 days to air. Of course it is, because I used every number but that one.
6 days to air. 6 days to air. Yeah, the making of South Park. 6 days to air. I feel like this one was...
shows you how much I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rush 6-day production schedule with 22-minute episode is completed just hours before its original air date.
God.
Premiered October 9th on Comedy Central. So, yeah, see? Yeah, I remember.
I was 6 and promptly picked up calling my uncle, "You bastard. You bastard. You killed Jimmy. You bastard." Yeah, I remember when that was the catchphrase everyone was saying, and you my cheesy poofs, and like that was, everyone was talking about cheesy poofs, and yes. And this
basketball.
Nintendo 64 game where you would like have a cow gun and the butt would land over their heads, and yeah, I remember all that stuff. Youth. I never saw basketball.
I did, and only just because it was Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Like, that was...
Oh, I put in basketball. I was like, why is LeBron James on here?
He's one of the more famous basketball players.
I was like, that's not what I'm looking for. This looks about right. Because they're actually in it, aren't they? Like, they're
the main characters. And essentially, what they invented... So the base plot... or I guess not really the full plot, but the premise is that these two are basically lazy ne'er-do-wells kind of thing, and they were just out back shooting hoops, and then like the jock boys came up and wanted to play 2-on-2 basketball against them, and they're like, they're too lazy to run around. They didn't want to run around. They like shooting hoops. They just didn't like to do all the running. So they basically on the fly created the game basketball. So you didn't have to, you just stood there to shoot. And that's how you moved around the bases and yada, yada, yada. And it just became like, it blew up into this big, sport. And yeah,
Oh.
Yeah, they gate crashed their high school reunion and are shunned by their classmates. They find them outside drinking beer and shooting basketball when classmates challenge them to a game. After seeing they're good at the basketball, they're going to say they're going to play this game they picked up on the streets. Yeah, so they basically made it up, and yeah.
And how is it not an actual sport today?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think they could have been onto something.
Might be on the Ocho.
You made a basketball court in real life, Harbor? Oh, David Zucker. Okay. Not who I thought it was. Who's the guy who did, Bruce Almighty? His name wasn't the director of that. Going down my own little rabbit hole. Oh, Tom Shadyac. That's right. That's what I was thinking of. It wasn't him.
Another good movie.
Yeah.
The first one, anyway.
I know. I didn't see Evan Almighty.
Yeah, I felt like it was it was a movie that should have not had a sequel. Like it was a standalone. Here's the story. Here's God giving the everyman his powers to show him that this is way more, whatever. And it's a one-off movie. Now we don't need to give it to somebody else, and because it's going to be basically the same kind of situation, really.
Oh yeah, it was a Hollywood money grab. That's all they wanted. The first one did so well. Let's see, their budget was $81 million, and they made back almost $500 million.
Yeah.
So they were like, and let's see how did Evan Almighty do? That one just under made it. So the budget was almost double, more than double, $175 million, and it made back $173.4 million.
They lost like
so
$1 million.
Almost broke even.
Yeah.
But it didn't. But Tom Shadyac, he did like Ace Ventura, Liar Liar, Patch Adams, like a whole bunch of movies. And then he did this really interesting, here it is, a documentary called I Am, where he went around and talked to like all the leading minds of today and asked them like, what do we know right now, or what are we discovering right now? What is the cutting edge of everything? And he's going around talking to people who are like, oh, we can now pick up the energy of like bacteria on yogurt, like how it interacts with your stress. So they put like these little electrodes on yogurt and ask them to think of something positive, and they could actually measure the meter and be like, yes, they're actually picking up on that. Or he'd like think of something negative and he immediately start thinking about his lawyers, and like the meter went the other way, and they're like, yeah, the bacteria on this yogurt is being affected by you. And like it had a whole bunch of like really crazy stuff in it.
It's like the Force. What is it filled with mini
kind of. They were talking about how they place these machines all around the world, and their only job is to generate random numbers. Like that's it. And for some reason, when catastrophic events happen, like hurricanes and things like that, all of a sudden there'll be patterns in all of the machines everywhere, and they don't know why it does that because they're only programmed to generate random numbers.
So they just like come into some sort of synchronization for a little while before things go haywire.
And then they go back to random again.
Weird.
Yeah, like stuff like that. I was like, whoa, wait, what? All right, time for bed. Have a great night. Stream dude. Thanks for hanging out, Harbor. Hope you had a great stream. Thank you for that raid. I appreciate it. Again, if you guys aren't following Seismic Harbor, he's another variety streamer. I'll give him a follow. If you are new here, this is a segment called Wiki-Wednesday that I do on Wednesdays, where we just do a deep dive into Wikipedia, and I have a guest with me every week, and this time it is alynntheyelloweyed. He's also a variety streamer on the platform, so make sure you give him a follow as well and check out his content. But he's hanging out with me in the stream as we started with coconut crabs, and we've gone down through D&D and puppets and all kinds of stuff.
How did we get here?
What happened? We talked about food. What else do we want to talk about tonight?
So I'm kind of curious. I'm trying to read through some of these things with this IM just to see what other kind of weirdness.
Oh yeah.
Because like, to me, there's a lot of mystery in the world, and there's also a lot of not mystery in the world, and I'm always interested in things that seem like magic.
Yeah.
being, going back to the D&D thing, but things that seem like magic, but it's not magic, right? It's measurable, but we don't quite know why it's measurable. Like, okay, you've got yogurt, you put electrodes in it, you think about your lawyers and meter moves.
Yeah.
That's magic. Because we don't know why it does that. So that's...
Yeah. And it's interesting that it's measurable, because I've always been someone where, like, I can tell if someone's in a bad mood before I even interact with them. Like, I've always, like, felt that. Like, I can always feel... I've never used the term empath, but I do have... I can feel, like, how a person is doing. I can tell when someone's faking it, like, when they're, like... If they're being, like, fake nice. Like, not just in tone, but, like, I can just feel it. And things like that. So it's interesting to see that they may have found a way to actually measure that on something, even on like a microscopic level, to be like, yeah, we can actually, like, if you're in a bad mood, like, you're actually affecting things around you, and now we can now see it affecting something, even though it's really, really tiny.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty intrigued by that.
Yeah, and again, what was it? Any significantly advanced technology would seem like magic, or something to that. I can't remember exactly how that quote goes, but essentially, yeah, if you took a cell phone back to the Middle Ages, well, you wouldn't get any service, so I guess it would be worthless. But
Yeah. You'd be like, look at this black brick I have.
look at this. I got pictures of my dog on it.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything else right now.
Yeah, I can take more pictures, I guess.
Yeah, that's all I can do.
I can show you how a camera works.
I want to come up with this really great analogy and then realize right after I say it that it's stupid. All right. You were all welcome for that.
Man.
Fatal flaw of my plan.
I'd throw up the iFart app and dazzle them all. I can make the same sound that comes out of your rear. Are you ready?
He's a witch.
There's 7 different sounds. Yeah, then they just burn you and you end up dying anyway.
I get in the river because I weigh more than a duck.
You think you're going to be revered as some crazy, awesome wizard, and they end up killing you.
Just kill you, burn you at the stake, and crush,
And you're like,
crush the cell phone and throw it in the fire.
like, crap.
And then they talk about the devil screen.
Oh, man.
The devil light.
So, what were some of your favorite shows growing up? What shaped you as a person?
Battlestar Galactica.
Okay.
The old Battlestar Galactica. Like, I wasn't a kid when the new one came out. I'm much older.
So,
than that.
1978 TV series.
Yeah. Yep. And watched that with my dad a lot.
Okay.
So that was a big. That's like sci-fi. Just is a big part of who I am, and sci-fi and fantasy. Those are my two big genres.
Okay.
So, and watching this with my dad had a lot to do with it, and of course, reading Lord of the Rings and all that as a kid also has part to do with the other side of it. But yeah, this show I watched a lot of with him, and I think that's just part of it because it was one of the shows that my dad and I watched together.
Wow.
So, and then there's
You see here, the pilot to this series was budgeted at $8 million. One of the most expensive at the time. It was released theatrically in various countries, including Canada. And it was edited into a 125-minute version. $8 million for the pilot? Wow.
I think it was like not a mini series, but kind of like there was a lot to, like, they set up a lot of the movie at the beginning because a lot of stuff basically happens. Their home planets get destroyed, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, I remember watching a lot of that. I remember watching old episodes of like Buck Rogers.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. It's included in the description of Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Here's Buck Rogers.
DVD.
Wow.
Whatever that dude's name is, that robot.
Were you into Star Trek as well?
I was not. I got into it more. Like I watched it a bit as a kid, but Star Trek, the series portion of it has always been a lot more cerebral. In the way that it ran the series, as opposed to like the movies tend to be a little more action packed and whatnot. But the series itself tended to be a lot more. There was political stuff. There was, the occasional fun thing with the tribbles or whatever. But it was a lot more slower paced and because of the episodic format. So I wasn't into it too much as a kid. But as the next generation, when I was a teen.
Okay.
That was my jam. I was about watching the next generation. All about the next generation.
Yeah, there wasn't really next generation. I mean, that was was that 80s?
No, that was
90s. Star Trek Next Generation. What was your timeline? So that was 87 to 91, 91 to 94. Okay, there's giving me. See, when did it air?
87 is when it started.
Original release 87 to 94. So they're really for my generation, because I was born in the 80s. I would have been really young when Next Generation came out. So there wasn't really a Star Trek series that came out for my generation. I don't feel like.
Yeah, so that was from me from 10 till 86 or 94? Yeah, so till 16.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the formative years.
Oh, yes.
So really start coming into your own what you like and so on.
I mean, I like the newer movies, but that's coming from somebody who doesn't really know the series at all.
What I like about the new movies is they did a really good job of creating the retcon. Right? So, because essentially you had years and years and years of lore that has been built up over this period of time, and now you're bringing in new actors and actresses to play these iconic characters again. And how do we do that and not tell the exact same stories? Because these are these people's lives and we already have that lore. So that whole time change, going back in time, and basically because of the Romulans going back in time and changing the timeline, that made it basically so now this is a brand new universe and they can do pretty much whatever the heck they want. Because the timeline is now changed.
So they did a good job of beating the Spider-Man conundrum of how do we keep changing Spider-Man without keep giving the origin story over and over and over again every time we change Spider-Man.
That's one of my favorite things about the new guy. I can't remember his name, but that they completely skipped over that. And he's already been in high school. He's already kind of Uncle Ben's already gone. He's just living with his aunt. Because everybody knows that. You don't really need to show that again.
Yeah.
There's only so many times that I really want to see Uncle Ben die and tell him with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
It just...
Yeah.
Let's skip that. We know.
Yeah, we know he got bit by a spider. We know that there's things that we as a population now is now general knowledge, which it's not something to be revealed anymore.
As well is that they went to the electronic web shooters. It wasn't part of his body like Tobey Maguire one.
Yeah,
that it was built like he was growing them himself and all that. It's no, he was a genius and he learned how to make his own stuff, and that was part of the reason that he had to get a job is to pay for the web fluid. I'm just no, this doesn't work.
Yeah, I haven't seen Far From Home. I remember seeing Homecoming. I haven't seen Far From Home.
I have not seen Far From Home yet either. I do want to see because it's basically the first movie that happens after Endgame.
Okay. Oh, see, I kind of fell off the whole Marvel machine after the first Avengers movie came out.
Okay.
I was like, this is what we're all building up to. Here it is, the Avengers. And then I think I saw like Guardians of the Galaxy 1 after that.
Mhm.
And then that's like the last Marvel movie I remember seeing. I was kind of like, all right, well, I mean, I get it. I guess we're just going to keep pumping these things out. But I've been meaning to catch up, but I just never really have.
I feel that for having the number of movies that they had, they have done just a really good job of keeping the continuity from beginning to end, in the timeline and everything, and it comes together because they use that information essentially, in the actual like the end game, 1 and 2. Essentially, that whole Infinity War series with the 2 movies, that becomes really important in that. And the fact that they kept that continuity to make it really mean something, and essentially what comes down to the end of Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which allows them now to bring in their secondary generation superheroes. The whole thing was well put together.
I need to try again.
To me, it was on the like Star Wars level, original trilogy level of keeping things together from beginning to end.
Which is impressive because it's a lot more movies.
Way more.
Yeah,
movies.
That's a lot of movies to keep track of.
Like this would be if everybody also loved the trilogy and the pre-trilogy, the prequels and the sequels, and everything mapped out perfectly from beginning to end.
What a world that would be, huh?
Yeah,
The Star Wars phenomenon does amaze me because I feel like part of the Star Wars fandom is not liking Star Wars. It's liking it so much that you don't like it. Like, because I feel like people complain about it just as much as they love it. Like, I don't remember the last time anybody like resoundingly liked a Star Wars movie. Like maybe Strikes Back.
Yeah, The Empire Strikes Back, I think, is considered the best movie of all the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, what I do. One of the things that I do like about the Disney acquisition of Star Wars, and then I'll go into something about what I don't like about the Disney acquisition of Star Wars. But one of the things I like about the Disney acquisition of Star Wars is that they started putting money behind it to start doing things like The Mandalorian and telling other stories that happen in this galaxy far, far away that isn't based around the Skywalker family.
Yeah, like Rogue One and Solo and like all that kind of stuff.
Mandalorian, all those things.
Yeah.
And because there is more to Star Wars than the Skywalkers.
What?
I mean, obviously, that's kind of the central point of the first trilogy. And so you built the beginning on how did the bad guy become the bad guy and then what happened kind of afterwards.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to that universe. There's more to the Force than just good or evil and things like that. So I do like that Disney is putting money behind those kinds of projects. What I don't like is watching Darth Vader do the moonwalk on some stage somewhere in some theme park.
Yeah.
And it goes into a dance battle with Padme.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is the dumbest.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I worked there and saw those things.
Yeah. I don't know why that bothers me so much. It just, to me, so like if you wanted to do like maybe like a thrill ride, like it's the trench run, and then you're like it's a movie screen and the whole like all the seats move and stuff.
Yeah.
You're gonna have characters. Perfect. Awesome. That's a great use of those characters in your little money-making machine. But when you make them have dance battles, you are essentially taking them completely out of what makes them cool.
And makes them even cooler.
Stupid.
Oh.
Darth Vader doesn't need to do the moonwalk. Darth Vader doesn't need to do I had the time of my life
Is that?
song with Padme. Like,
to have. Yeah.
I don't know why. I've watched them and I'm just like, this is blasphemy. This is what religious people mean when they say blasphemy. This is how they feel. This is how they feel.
So circling back to like the Muppet idea, like I wish they would do what they're doing with Star Wars. I wish they would do with the Muppets, where they would like let Gonzo have his own movie, and like Kermit and Fozzie and Piggy and Animal, like they don't have to be there. Like they can be tied into the story somehow, but like they don't have to be there. Like I wish they would expand the universe of like the Muppets and let them expand like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know,
just a shrimp out on his own.
Yeah, Pepe. Hurry, okay.
just
out there doing my thing. Yeah.
Interviewing individuals like Borat. You know, just a Borat kind of clone, but with shrimp.
So they did this newer series on Disney Plus called Muppets Now. And it's kind of like a blah series. Like, it's kind of like a really weak Muppet show. Like, it's just bare bones and feels really sad. But one really good segment that they had going throughout the series was Pepe has a game show where, like, he's just kind of making stuff up as he goes. And right. I'm like, having him do a spin-off and letting him just have a game show to me would be hilarious. And like Scooter is like the announcer person. He just keeps giving Scooter a hard time and calling him the wrong name, like Skeeter and all that kind of stuff. But
that's a great idea.
Yeah, there's one part where he's like asking the contestant something personal, and the person's like, "Well, my dog passed away." He's like, "Oh, so your dog's dead." Like it's like very like deadpan, but it like starts talking about the dead dog and how the dog is dead, and like I was just lost it because it was the first time the Muppets had made me laugh out loud like in a long time. But him having his own game show would be like a perfect like universe expansion. Like, yeah, let him be a game show host, and like that's now part of it because it was so good. The segments were so funny.
If you think about it, like you could easily have like one of the contestants is always some sort of guest. Like they used to have guest stars on every week on the Muppet Show.
Yeah,
right. Like, it's an easy format to bring on whoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then just use that and play off that. Like, let's bring on Lady Gaga. Like, I'm sure Pepe could come up with some amazing things to talk to Lady Gaga about. And just and just let it happen and see how it goes. Like that's a good format to do something like that.
That's what brought in the viewers really, because in the early days of the Muppet Show, like Jim knew he needed that, and they were calling in favors for like the first season to get people to actually do this project, and then after season 1, they had their pick of whoever they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the good thing about the show is that they trusted the Muppets to be on their own, but in their newer projects, they feel like if the celebrity isn't there to hold the character's hand through everything, then nobody's going to want to watch or care about these characters. Like now the celebrity, since Disney has taken over, has become the crutch of the show instead of something that's added on and fun. Like even if you watch the newer movies or any of their newer projects, there's rarely any scene where there isn't a human person involved in some way. And it's like, you can like let the Muppets, like some of the best scenes are like, Fozzie and Kermit in the car singing Moving Right Along. And there's no human in that scene. But like people remember that being endearing. Kermit singing, it's in the Rainbow Connection, sitting on the log, like iconic. There's no human involved in that. And it's like just trusting them to be on their own, I think, is a big issue.
That's one of the more interesting, that Rainbow Connection song where they're in the swamp.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he's sitting on that log, and I know they have some sort of tub that is in there that is keeping the puppeteer dry, but it's so seamless. Like it honestly doesn't look like there's anything behind it. And I kind of I always in my mind, I'm like, I want to know what behind there looks like.
Oh, there's diagrams and stuff you can look up. But
Is there?
it's Jim Henson. He's sitting in a giant like tank, and he's bunched up in there. It's just big. Like they built the swamp in a soundstage. It's not. It looks really real, but it's not. But they built it with the idea of putting him in a tank and lowering him in, and then he would stick his hand up through a hole, and there would be a breathing tube as well, so he could get the air. But it's like just a spot for his arm to come out and go up into Kermit, and then the rest of him is in this giant canister, cylindrical canister.
And everything.
What's that?
So his arm is actually going up through the tree and everything. Then.
Yeah, that's his live arm. It's not animatronics or anything. That's his arm. And then he had a little tiny TV in his lap, and he's just sitting there like completely scrunched up, like knees to chest, little monitor, arm up through, and performing him through the log.
Wow.
And then there's a tube for air. Hello, Lo-Fi. How are you? Welcome in. We're talking Muppets. But yeah, it was a really impressive shot that they did, and it was like quintessential to the film. It's like, if this is how we're gonna do it, this is how Jim envisioned it happening. Was just a big swooping shot of Kermit by himself, because he saw the movies as an excuse to like push the limits of puppetry, and he was like, okay, if we're gonna do a movie, we can't just do the Muppet Show. Like, we have to make it bigger. So doing shots like this and them riding bikes and like all that kind of stuff, which were giant marionette shots, was like his way of like raising the bar for the movie and making the movie something more than just a 90-minute episode of The Muppet Show.
And Rainbow Connection is one of those songs, like, I'm not like an emotional person, right? Like, I'm an army man, I was in the army, blah, blah, blah. But something about the Rainbow Connection always just kind of makes me feel hopeful and wistful.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that song in particular. But if I happen to be walking by the TV and this song is on, or this movie is on, it takes a lot of willpower for me not to just sit down to watch it.
Yeah.
So,
and the way he sings it, like the way it's been described to people as like perfectly imperfect, where like you can tell he didn't spend a lot of time like honing his ability to sing that song and hit the notes perfectly. It was more about, let me just sing it a few times so I know the words and then I can sing it earnestly. It's not overproduced or over anything. I think really adds to it as well. Like that layer of it not being perfectly sang, I think also humanizes it even more. It makes it more. Who wrote it? Paul Williams wrote it. Good old Paul Williams. He's written like a bunch of stuff.
I always find it interesting. Like genres of music always kind of not weird me out, but I'm always interested because they have this located under pop. And if you look at music today and what qualifies as pop music, Rainbow Connection doesn't have anything.
That's true, they do. I never knew that they did it under pop, but to me it's more folky.
Like that's what I would kind of feel like. It would be more folk or something in that realm. But I find it interesting that so I think like genres are those things, like they exist solely to try to put things in buckets.
Oh yeah, just categorize things.
Don't necessarily need to be in buckets. Like when rock music started to have rappers and rappers started to use rock music as back, it's like, oh, now this is rap rock. I'm like, why can't it just be just rap, and why couldn't it just be rock? Why does it have to become a new thing? Why can't and it gets really confusing when you start looking at like the different metal genres. Like, have you ever looked up like all the different kinds of like, oh, we got new metal, we've got heavy metal, we've got rock, we've got
thrash metal and death metal and metal.
I'm just like, do you really need to break them down this much? Can't you just say metal and be happy?
I'm still waiting for ska metal. Just metal with a big brass section in it. It's kind of poppy, but has a lot of bass. Yeah, that's what I want. But hi, Lo-Fi. How are you? Welcome in. Hi. Hello. This is our segment called Wiki-Wednesday, where every week, in fact, Lo-Fi, if you want to do one of these, we hang out on a Wednesday night, and I have a different guest every week, and we just kind of go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole. And ska metal's a thing? Is it really? My dream? Like, it has to be a thing. Of course it's a thing. If you think of something, it's already done. But this is our segment that I'm starting to do every week, where we just go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole, and I have a different guest every week. Last week I had Mimi as a nerd, who's in chat right now. This week I have Alan. Next week is the Rusty Panda. Following week is Angel Felis. So it's just a night to hang out and just chill and get to know community members and other streamers more. But with that, we're at the 2-hour mark. Is there any last things you want to talk about, Alan?
I mean, in general, no. I had fun. If you thought I was somewhat funny,
shameless plug it up.
You could always check me out on alynntheyelloweyed at the twitch.tv.
On the Twitchers, yeah.
Yeah, on the Twitchers. You can find me at alynntheyelloweyed on the Facebook, Jesus. Facebook. On the YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alan Yelloweyed on the Twitters.
So yeah, go stalk him on all the social medias. When do you normally stream, Alan?
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday.
Wow, okay.
So usually starting on 7 p.m. During the week, except for Friday nights is when we play Dungeons and Dragons, and I start at 7:30. And then on Sunday, I am on all day. I start at 10 in the morning and usually don't quit until after 6 p.m.
Okay. I'm gonna check out the D&D stream. I want to see. Are you using that digital thing for the one you're currently doing?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
and you
cool.
can also see some of the ones that I've done before on my YouTube channel.
I'm gonna check out. I'm definitely gonna go scour your VODs. I want to see what it looks like. But thank you so much for hanging out. This was fun. We went down a fun little. Started with coconut crabs and ended on Muppets. So thanks for hanging out. It was a lot of fun. It was good getting to know you more.
Dungeons and Dragons and
Dungeons and Dragons and South Park and Star Trek and all kinds of stuff. But thank you. I know we only got to interact briefly at PAX South last year. So this is our first time having a back and forth conversation. But I really enjoyed it. Maybe we'll have you back again sometime down the line if you want to do this again, and we'll hang out and go down another rabbit hole.
Yes.
But thank you so much for being here. And thank you guys for watching. If you're new here and you want to know what I'm going live, I do a bunch of stuff. I do crossword puzzle streams and this Wiki-Wednesday stuff. I'll be doing puppetry tomorrow night on Daisy Days' channel. Dumpleping is going to be hanging out with her. I don't know if we might be playing Among Us. I know we talked about maybe turning it into a community night. So if you want to see some puppetry stuff and see me and another character, you can find me over there. I also have all the social medias. You can find all the links in the description below. There's everything: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. We know all the things you do. So thank you guys so much for being here. And I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. And perhaps I will see you on the next stream. Thank you. Oh, that's not the one I want to go to. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, Adjective Beaver, Licho, and Mama Roo for being awesome people and helping me out on the highest level. If you like what I'm doing on here, whether it's my creative streams or the gaming stuff or TikTok or just support me as a content creator in general, Patreon is a great way to do it. Here's some other awesome people who support me on that platform, so check it out. There's a link in the description with all the different tiers and everything. Thank you to my moderators, Daisy Days, Licho, Galvos, and the Rusty Panda for making this a safe place for you to hang out, and my creative team, Darkside and Sleek Mouse, for making it a nice place to look for your eyeball holes. Last but not least, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.